A truly horrific case of horse abuse, neglect, and repetitive scamming may actually see some justice, a real rarity when it comes to animal abuse. Today, we are going to be diving into the allegations against Stephanie Redlick. I've been keeping my eye on this case since February when I first found out about it, and I was originally going to make a video on it back then, but I decided to wait because it was still heavily under investigation, everything was still kind of up in the air, and I wasn't really sure how to go about it safely for, protecting myself legally, because this woman has threatened a lot of people with legal action, and I was in the infancy of my YouTube channel and was like, let's avoid a lawsuit early on, shall we? But now that this case is before the courts, I feel that it is fair game to report on it. And I think that it's really important to bring awareness to abuse and neglect cases like this so that we can continue to educate the general public, because a lot of the time when these kinds of cases are happening, the only people that know about them are equestrians or animal welfare advocates. And I think it's important to continue to highlight for everyone that cases like this do still happen. And this one is horrendous. This case has been weighing so heavily on my mind because it is so close to home. This whole situation is unfolding basically like 2.5 hours away from where I live. So this is very much happening in like my local equestrian community. That's part of why I want to talk about it. It's so close to home and almost nobody is talking about it outside of the few news reports that have been released and the Ontario Equestrian Facebook group. This woman is not only an alleged animal abuser, and yes, I have to say alleged because technically everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and I have to protect myself legally, but given all of the evidence, I'm sure that you guys can guess where I'm leaning with it. But she's not just an alleged animal abuser, she's also an alleged scam artist who is known to use upwards of 20 aliases to buy and sell horses. Now, before we jump into everything, I do just want to let you guys know that I will be putting photos throughout this video of the situations that these horses were in and the condition that these horses were in. There are graphic photos, and it may not be suitable for all viewers. If you have a hard time seeing animals in emaciated states or in severe states of injury, or seeing those kinds of cruel conditions that animals can be kept in, then please either just don't watch the video and just listen to it, or click off now, or just go to the end if you want to use the time codes in the description. It is going to be a heavy video, so I can understand if that's something that is too much for you to watch. I will not hold it against you. I want you to be careful with your own mental health. This kind of thing can be a lot. So this is your warning. There are graphic photos and graphic descriptions ahead. If this is not something that you can handle, that's okay. You can go watch another video. For as much information as I've been able to find on Stephanie Redlick's actions and her neglect and her scamming, I really have not been able to find out much about her as a person. I've only been able to find one photo of her side profile, none of her face. I don't know how old she is. I don't know where she's from. I don't know any of that stuff. Now, granted, I am not a researcher, an investigator, or a reporter, so I'm sure that somebody more skilled than me would be able to find that information, but I was not. I even had a hard time finding her Facebook account because the name is constantly changing, and even just the other day I went to go look for it again, and I think the name has changed again because I can't find it. What I do know about Stephanie Redlick is that she has posed herself as this accomplished equine rescuer operating under the name of Above the Stars Equine Rescue, and yet up until fairly recently, she had 20 horses on her property that were in varying stages of starvation and neglect. Some of which died on her property due to the neglect, and others that had to be humanely euthanized because they were past the point of saving. Back in the winter, local residents were calling for intervention with allegations of severe neglect on a rural property that was owned by Stephanie Redlick. Redlick denied any wrongdoing, saying, "I have food and water for the horses. These accusations are bogus." A woman named Barb McLeod said, "It's really bad. They are all going to die. One colt is already dead. It's brutal." These local residents have said that they've been observing these animals in poor condition for over a year. They are just bones. The woman who owns them lives in Toronto, and nothing is being done to help them. A woman named Morgan Chestnut, who spends time at a neighboring barn, said that the situation was, quote, absolutely disgusting, saying that she has seen horses that were lying in their own feces, suffering from hoof infections and starvation, and even a dead foal lying in a stall with its mother. Our timeline starts on February 2nd, 2025 at 4:30 p.m. when a man named Jim Horn was called by his second cousin's wife Diane to ask if he would be able to help a young woman whose mare had given birth the night before. I'm going to read his statement for you guys word for word to make sure that I don't miss anything. Diane works at a gas station close to a property that Stephanie Redlick leases, and Stephanie came into the gas station to get some water for the mare. Stephanie Redlick told Diane the foal was born during the night in a small uninsulated barn. The outside temperature was minus 18 degrees Celsius, minus 26 with the wind chill factor. For those of you that use Fahrenheit, that's just shy of 0 degrees Fahrenheit and negative 14.8 degrees Fahrenheit with the wind chill factor. The newborn somehow got hung up over a chain that goes from a gate to a post at the end of the stall, and the foal was stuck there until Stephanie, who does not live on the property, arrived the next day. Once freed from the gate, the foal's back legs were stiff. I arrived at approximately 6 p.m. When I went into the small barn, which is more of a shed, I saw the mom and her foal. The stall had about 3 feet of manure in it, and the mare was eating hay that was also her bedding. The baby was uncovered and cold. I immediately got a bottle from Stephanie and fed the foal and asked Stephanie to milk the mother and get more milk to feed the filly. I covered the foal in blankets and rubbed her. I squeezed her back legs and was happy to get a response to the pressure. I lifted her up and she was putting some weight on her back legs, but she was not strong enough to keep standing on her own. I laid her back down and fed her again. She had a vigorous appetite. I told Stephanie that the mare and foal needed to go to the Ontario Veterinary College at the University of Guelph and that I would arrange for transportation. She said she couldn't afford trailering, so I said I would pay for it. Stephanie's mother was there as well. I told both of them that they must stay with the baby all night feeding her, keeping her warm, and allowing her to sleep between feedings. I warned them that she would die if they did not do as I asked. They both agreed to stay all night in their vehicle and care for the foal until I picked her up in the morning. I received a text from Stephanie around 6:15 a.m. saying she just went back to Toronto, an hour away from the foal, to nap and that I could load her and take her. I said she had to be present as I didn't want to later be accused of stealing her. She then said she had to take her dad to the hospital and would not be able to get back to the barn until later. I asked her when the foal was last fed. She said 7:15 a.m., which didn't make sense as she had sent me a text at 6:15 a.m. that she was an hour away napping and wouldn't be able to come to the property until later in the morning. She didn't get to the barn until 9 a.m. I looked after my horses and then headed over to the property Stephanie leases to wait for Stephanie and to feed the foal while I waited. When I got there, I could see the baby half covered with the blankets and she had digging marks all around her, made by her mother trying to get her up. The foal was dead. Stephanie did not stay the night and texted Diane during the night to say she didn't stay because she was too tired. When Stephanie arrived, I looked at her and told her the foal was dead. I asked her if she stayed all night and she swore she did and said she fed her every 20 minutes and rubbed her all night to keep her warm. That didn't make sense based off of what she'd texted Diane Bileski. I am including a screenshot below of the message Stephanie sent to Diane on Sunday evening, February 2nd, stating that she had left. Stephanie did not appear upset in any way. She just wanted to know how to dispose of the body. I told her to call a dead stock company, but instead, after 2 days of the dead foal lying in the stall with the mother, she dragged it to the woods for coyotes to eat. I would also like to note that inside the barn, any water buckets were frozen solid and the outside water troughs were empty. I am haunted by this situation. Had I known what I was dealing with, I would have stayed. I am certain the foal would have lived. At that point, I vowed that this beautiful foal's death would not be in vain and that I would do anything and everything I could to stop Stephanie Redlick from inflicting such cruelty on any other trusting, beautiful soul. Horses only have us to protect them, and now after a week of endless phone calls and police visits, I am frustrated that it feels like my complaints and concerns are falling on deaf ears. So we can see here in this screenshot that on February 3rd at 12:03 a.m., Stephanie texted Diane Bileski saying, "Had to come home, I'm fucking dead tired. This Jim guy is a fucking angel." Despite Jim's warnings, it appears that Stephanie left the property around 11 p.m. or potentially even earlier, and living an hour away would make it impossible for her to keep her promise. After this tragedy, Jim reached out to Summer Secord and Crystal Mitchell, two animal welfare advocates and rescuers, to inform them about the lack of care that resulted in the death of the foal and the overall horrible conditions and lack of care for all of the other horses. On February 3rd, Summer Secord and her team were invited onto the property by Stephanie under the premise of receiving donated horses. So essentially, Stephanie had agreed to surrender at least a few of her horses. But when they arrived, they found an urgent crisis. Summer saw emaciated horses blanketed to conceal their skeletal frames, injuries left untreated, and horses standing in their own feces with no food or water. One horse was seen desperately searching through its own waste to find food. The mare, who had just given birth, was found alone in a filthy stall, nudging the body of her dead foal. The foal, whose body was later found dumped in the snow. The team was permitted to take 4 of the worst off horses, but it was clear to them that all of the horses needed to get off that property immediately. Many of the remaining horses were suffering from severe malnutrition and horrible medical conditions that were being left untreated. The rescue team contacted law enforcement and the Animal Welfare Agency of Ontario, but due to legal loopholes, there was nothing that they could do. Because you see, here in Ontario, our animal welfare laws suck. Because food, water, and shelter were available sometimes, there was nothing that law enforcement could do to take the horses off of the property. Never mind the fact that the way that their digestive system works requires them to have an almost constant intake of food to prevent the development of gastric ulcers. Stephanie was incredibly difficult throughout this entire situation. She originally offered to donate one of the mares, but then turned around and said that she wanted $3,000 for her. On February 5th, she said that she had someone from the States that was willing to pay $13,000 for that horse. Of the horses that she did not let go, she claimed that some of them were worth up to $50,000. So it was clear she didn't give them up because she thought that they could make her money. When the team was invited back to the farm, they asked if there was anything that they could do. Stephanie asked them to feed the horses in the barn, and they brought hay from their own properties because there was no hay on site. She had 20 horses on this property, and there was no hay on the property. When they brought the hay into the barn, the horses aggressively snatched it and then defended their food. Resource guarding only happens when A, they have reason to believe that there will not be enough, B, they have a history of there not being enough food, or C, they have a history of their food being taken from them, either by a human or another horse. They provided water as well, and the horses struggled to decide whether or not they should eat or drink first. Because remember, every single water bucket in the barn and every trough outside was either frozen solid or empty. On February 6th, Stephanie relinquished 4 horses, one of which was a 5-year-old thoroughbred named Seattle Sunrise. She had purchased him at an auction November 28th, 2024. The photo taken at the time of purchase shows him to be in excellent condition, but when Jim Horn and the rescue team visited the farm, Seattle Sunrise's extremely poor body condition was hidden underneath a ripped blanket. He was emaciated. Upon donation, he was put onto antibiotics for 10 days with 30 tablets given every day. Unfortunately, he was not saved early enough, and the neglect that he had suffered was just too severe to come back from. After only 10 weeks of being under the care of Stephanie Redlick, Seattle Sunrise had to be humanely euthanized on February 17th. This horse starves to death in 10 weeks. In order for a horse to starve to death in 10 weeks, that is not, oh, I just didn't give him quite enough food each day, or like I only gave him half of what he should have had. No, that's, I fed this horse just enough for it to not die up until that point. For it to go from this to this in 10 weeks, he was probably fed, he would have been fed most likely the bare minimum calories required to keep him alive. This horse was 5 years old. 2 of the other horses that were relinquished, Xena and Shira, show us just how horrible the neglect was that they suffered. It is visible all over their bodies. Shira, a warm blood quarter horse cross, was unhandled and timid, and her hooves had either never been done or hadn't been done in a significantly long time and were in desperate need of corrective work. Xena, a draft cross mare, said to be a Frisian Percheron cross, presented with a hernia. She was covered in cow feces, unhandled and scared, and also had overgrown feet. Anytime someone would try to touch her where the cow feces were packed onto her, she would kick out in pain. Like many of the other horses, she was also severely underweight and dehydrated. She was only 18 months old when she was found in this condition. She was a yearling. The AWS was alerted to the situation on February 4th, but did not visit the property until February 12th. 8 days after the initial report came in. It took them 8 days to check on the horses for the first time. But the horses weren't removed from the property until February 20th, 16 days after the initial report. Animal welfare advocates are now protesting to demand urgent reforms so that we can avoid any other animals ending up in situations like this, because the amount of time it took for the horses to be checked on and for the horses to be removed from the property is unacceptable. For months on Facebook, Stephanie was posting ridiculous claims saying that her horses had not been seized and they were still with her, and everyone's gonna regret this and justice will be served and blah blah blah. She even tried to turn it around on the actual rescuers, saying that they were criminals who had broken onto her property and harmed and killed her horses. A February 24th report from the AWS states that the horses were suffering from infected wounds, lameness, parasites, malnourishment, poor hygiene, and untreated medical conditions. On March 11th, a notice confirmed that one of the horses that had been seized from the property on February 20th, midnight, a 4-year-old thoroughbred mare who was described to be suffering from very thin body condition, nasal discharge from both nostrils, large scabs, and swelling of the left hind, had been euthanized on the advice of a veterinarian, which brings the death toll up to 3 that we're aware of. 3 horses died due to neglect. In addition to the truly horrendous conditions and neglect that Stephanie subjected these horses to, she is also a well-known scam artist. She has been reported to use upwards of 20 different personal and business names to buy and sell horses, screwing people over at every turn. King Farms is the most recent name of hers that I've been able to find, and you can just tell it's not a reputable breeding operation because of the photos she uses on her sales ads. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, these are nice horse photos, but they're not the photos you use on a sales ad for a horse when you are actually a breeding operation. Like, it's different if you are selling your own personal horse on Facebook, right? But if you're a breeding operation, you are trying to show just how perfect your specimen is, just how perfect your horse is. You're trying to show the conformation. You don't post this. Just some of the names that she's been known to use are Stephanie Alessia with 2 I's, Stephanie Schwartz, Stephanie Quickfall, Sammy SRZ, which I've learned is actually her father, Healthy Equine Homeopathy, SBR Equestrian Breeding and Sales Limited, Precision Stables, and King Livestock Transportation. And here is a photo that includes a whole nother list of names that she has used because it seems to be endless. She just keeps changing the names of her accounts so that people don't figure out that it's her. She sold a horse to someone in BC for $10,000 and never delivered the horse. She bought a horse that had been deemed a companion or light riding horse by the previous owner's vet, something that was disclosed to Stephanie upon purchase. He had highly advanced ring bone and needed Previcox. Stephanie then turned around and tried to sell the same horse as a sound riding horse. One person shared their experience of having sent their horse Colby to Stephanie's farm to be a companion horse for Stephanie's horse. Colby has kissing spine and needs multiple injections to stay comfortable. He's comfortable doing light riding on a trail, but that's it. Within 48 hours of having Colby on her property, Stephanie listed a sales ad for him, describing him as a low-maintenance horse. Didn't disclose any areas of concern. Not his kissing spine, or his SI, hock, or stifle injections that he needs to stay moving. And keep in mind, the owner did not sell Colby to Stephanie. There was no bill of sale, there was no transfer of funds, there was no verbal agreement or contract. She was simply sending her horse to Stephanie's farm as a retirement for him to be a companion horse to Stephanie's horse. Luckily, action was taken and the OPP escorted the horse off of the property with the rightful owner, but had the owner not seen the sales ad, Colby could have ended up anywhere. Stephanie's actions are that of a vile and sneaky person. These are just a few of the stories that I was able to find. There are so many. Like, if you go onto any post that's talking about Stephanie Redlick, you will see at least 10 comments on the post of someone's specific experience with her, of getting scammed by her. And I'm sure that there are more stories that aren't even available online. Stephanie denies all of these claims and counters them with the claims of her being an accomplished equine rehabber and rescuer. She claims to have been rescuing animals for 7 years and recently saved 15 horses from slaughter. I lost $100,000 last week saving horses from the slaughter pipeline. I'm not an animal abuser. She is claiming that the people that have reported her for neglect have trespassed onto her property and harmed her horses. It's a nice little deflection of responsibility there. But when she was asked about the reports of a dead foal being left in the stall with its mother, she didn't deny the claim. She said, "That is none of anybody's business other than my veterinarian clinic, my law firm, my attorneys, and the courthouse." Making you look a little bit guilty there. She claims that she has supporters, suppliers, mentors, and sponsors all over the world that will vouch for her, but funnily enough, I haven't seen anybody step up and vouch for her, defend her. None of it. I've seen nobody. Literally not a single soul. Stephanie claims to run a reputable horse rescue, Above the Stars Equine Rescue. She has sought donations for this rescue, which she has previously claimed is a charity. However, neither the charity's name nor the registration number listed on her website can return any results in the Canadian Revenue Agency's database of registered and qualified charities, or in any of Canada's business registries. Nina Lusipova, a representative of the CRA, I really hope I said your name right, said that according to their records, Above the Stars is not currently nor has it previously been registered as a charity, and only Canadian registered charities and or qualified donees can issue official donation receipts that qualify for charitable tax credits. Since this fact was reported by Aurelia Matters, Stephanie's website no longer claims to be a charity organization that is government approved, and her registration number is no longer available on her website. So that brings us up to today. Stephanie Redlick is currently facing 13 charges under the Provincial Animal Welfare Services Act. She was charged on June 5th, 2025 with 7 counts of failing to meet standards of care, 3 counts of causing distress, and 3 counts of permitting distress. Which is not enough if you ask me. Where are the charges for causing death by neglect? Where's the charge for Seattle Sunrise? The 5-year-old horse that starved to death, or the 4-year-old mare Midnight who barely got a chance at life, or the foal that didn't even make it through the night even though she had every chance to. Jim Horn was very clear. If Stephanie had stayed the night, fed the filly every 20 minutes, and rubbed it to keep it warm, she would have survived. There was no reason for that foal to die. That foal died because Stephanie was too tired and thought that her being comfortable at home was more important than taking care of the life that she was responsible for bringing into this world. We don't know anything more about the current legal proceedings. A spokesperson for the Ministry of the Solicitor General said that it would be inappropriate for the ministry to provide further comment as the matter is before the courts. So right now, all we can really do is sit and wait and hope and pray that justice is served. Even if Stephanie is found guilty, it's unfortunately extremely unlikely that the penalties will actually be harsh enough to match the atrocities that she committed. When it comes to animal abuse and cruelty, the punishment rarely ever fits the crime. I didn't realize just how hard it is to research anything legal. I was trying really hard last night to try to figure out what the penalties would be if Stephanie was found guilty on all 13 counts, and from what I found, and I don't know if this is 100% correct because my brain was turning to mush as I was reading through the POLLY'S Act and the Criminal Code of Canada, 2 things that I'd hoped to never have to read in my life. It appears that an individual found guilty of willfully causing or permitting animals to suffer pain or injury can face a maximum imprisonment of 5 years or a fine of up to $10,000 with imprisonment of up to 18 months, and an owner or custodian who fails to provide adequate care faces imprisonment of up to 2 years or a fine of up to $5,000 with 6 months of imprisonment. Now, Stephanie is facing 13 charges, 7 counts of failing to meet standards of care, 3 counts of permitting distress, and 3 counts of causing distress. So I don't really know how the legal system works in these kinds of cases. If she's found guilty on all 13 counts, will the penalties be multiplied per count? I'm asking because I genuinely don't know and I can't seem to figure it out because legal websites are not an easy thing to navigate. Like, that should be easier to figure out. Like, legal codes should not be so hard to read. Now, technically, like I said, all of this is alleged. She may or may not have done this. I mean, the charges are real. She is facing 13 charges, but she may or may not have done this stuff, you know? Technically everyone is innocent until proven guilty, but the evidence is piling up and things are not looking good for Stephanie. Hey guys, Editing Kat coming to you here a good week or two after filming this whole video. I'm at my cottage, which is why the background is very different, and the sun is setting, so the lighting is a little bit weird, but I have some more information about this case to share with you, and that is that in addition to all of the criminal charges placed against Stephanie that have to do with animal abuse and neglect, she is also being charged for fraud. I'm going to read you a short little article from AureliaMatters.com, which is a local news reporting site. Police began a fraud investigation in February after receiving a complaint about transportation and financial irregularities of livestock being transported from a farm in Tay Township and sold at a Cookstown stockyard sale in September of 2024. A warrant was issued for the arrest of Stephanie Redlick, 28. Okay, so she's 28 years old. We didn't know this before. She's a lot younger than I thought she was. I don't know why I thought she was at least in her mid-30s. Stephanie Redlick, 28, of North York, and an interaction on June 27th, 2025 resulted in the warrant being acted upon by Toronto Police Service with an arrest. She has been charged with obtaining by false pretense over $5,000, fraud over $5,000, theft over $5,000, and making a forged document. She has been released from custody and is set to appear in court July 24th. So that is some more good news, because while of course our main concern is obviously the abuse and neglect of animals, she also needs to be held accountable for all of the fraud and scamming that she has done to so many people. So I'm glad that at the very least it seems like a few people have put in complaints and have pressed charges. So I'm glad to see that some of the people who have been harmed by her fraud will also see some justice. I really hope that for once an animal abuser is actually prosecuted. I really hope that justice can be served for Seattle Sunrise, for Midnight, for Xena, for Shira, for that foal that didn't live long enough to get a name, and for all of the other horses that had to be saved from her, and any other horses that we don't know about. These are beautiful, caring, intelligent, and trusting animals who relied on this woman for everything that they needed to live, and she did not provide. She deserves to be held accountable. Okay guys, I know that was really heavy. If you were able to stick through that whole thing, thank you. Even if you weren't, that's okay, I understand. Thank you for what you were able to watch or listen to, and I'm sorry that the lighting is like bad near the end. My light only has like a 45-minute life span, and I had to plug it in partway through, but I just need to get the video done, so I'm sorry that the lighting is poor near the end, but hopefully you were still able to stand watching it. But yeah, I feel like it's important to highlight cases like this because stuff like this still happens and a lot of people don't know about it, and we can't do anything unless we as the public are educated. So if I hear about more cases like this, I will try to talk about them. I've had some people send me certain cases from certain places where I had to choose not to because there was not a lot of information that I was able to find to back up the claims being made. But anytime that I can do adequate research, then I will try to talk about these cases. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.